I was adopted at the age of 10, so that changed my life. The gentleman that adopted me, he was a Marine. That kind of planted the seeds of what our country and our government was all about. It was something that I was living. So I became a Girl Scout. In between church and school and the Girl Scouts, that Girl Scout thing stayed with me the rest of my life. One of my first projects as a Girl Scout was candle making. There was lots of camping, walking trails. Of course, then we learned how to pitch camp and tents and nature walks and rock collecting and campfires, how to do a safe campfire. Wow. And for my 16th birthday, they took me on a tour across America. We hit every state except for Alaska and Hawaii. Feels like energy coming from this tree. Wow. Years and years of wisdom from this tree. There was a lot going on at that time. JFK was president. The Beatles invaded America. Governor George Wallace of Alabama at the time declared segregation for the whole state of Alabama. Dr. Martin Luther King did his I Have a Dream speech. A lot of things were being stirred up at the time in 1963.
At the present time, it is of paramount importance that the women and girls of our country be given training so that they may do their share in the war emergency. In the last 6 years, the National Youth Administration has done much to broaden opportunity for American youth. Today, it is broadening opportunities for service in the training of thousands of young women for war work.
President Kennedy established a presidential commission on the status of women, and he appointed Eleanor Roosevelt as the commission president, and she was 79 at the time. I was at UCLA. I was in my 5th year of med school when the female recruiters came to our campus. They were interviewing a lot of the female students, and they had a list of names, and my name was on that list. The Vietnam War was going on at the time. It just didn't occur. That was why we were being recruited, because they needed women. At the time, women were nurses or administrators.
All over the world, wherever our troops are stationed, the Army nurse is an ally of the soldier in his battle against sickness and pain. Her words of sympathy and understanding can be as important and valuable as her skill and knowledge. Both are required if she is to really fulfill her role as an Army nurse.
Maybe 9 months up the road, they sent a bus to campus to pick us up and take us to the MEPS, to the Military Processing Center. So we were called WAFs, the Women's Air Force. The WAF and the WACs, they were actually fully enlisted. Even though they were officers, they were called enlistees. They didn't distinguish anything different like they do today. My first assignment was 99th Combat Support Hospital in Westover Air Force Base, Springfield, Massachusetts.
Lift. 1, 2, OTD! Jody has it all. Jody has it all. Jody's on the ball. Jody's on the ball. Who's got it? Jody's got it. Who's got it? Jody's got it. Sound off. 1, 2. Sound again. 3, 4. Bring it on up. 1 up, 2 up, 3 up, 4 up. Bring it on down now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 3, 4.
Living quarters was our headquarters. Our assignments were given to us from what we call WAF unit. All the men are at war, and they're waking us up and telling us that we had snow removal detail and we had to plow the city. But this is the kind of things that we women did. We actually ran the bases and supported the cities. The cities actually depended on us because all the men were at war. It was a lot of pressure on us to keep things going. They were rotating women at the combat support hospital. I didn't know when my time was going to come, but it did. And that first deployment was to Korat Air Base in Thailand. Out in the field, we had a MASH unit, but we actually had hospitals to transport them from. They were brought in from the combat zone to the MASH unit, from the MASH unit to the hospitals, different hospitals in Thailand.
Hi, Rhonda. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, thank you.
How are you?
I'm here to see Dr. Pat Ryan.
Okay, I'll let her know you're here.
Okay. When there was a call for us to take the medevac to go into the combat zone to actually pick up the wounded, pick up the dying and the dead, we took turns. So it was always about 12-hour shifts.
Thank you. Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
I actually did a lot of, when I say bagging and tagging, you know what I mean. It's something you never get out of your head. The things that you see, you hear, you smell.
The thing that was interesting to me as a member of the Army Nurse Corps is that there was a real respect for rank and who you were, regardless of what your profession was. And so, nurses in the military, we were tight.
The men and women who become Army nurses may be student nurses or graduate professional nurses who have had hospital experience. To each, the Army Nurse Corps represents the epitome of the nursing profession. Here, a career in the Corps can span a lifetime of rewarding service and adventure in foreign lands.
Even though I had an MD behind my name, the male entity would only allow the females in the military to do so much. The MD and the doctor is supposed to be for the men only. We were one branch of the military. There were other branches there too. So we would see other women from other branches, but because we're all in green pickle suits, half the time you didn't know who was what part of the military branches. We didn't know. For our particular 99 Combat Support Hospital, there was a dozen of us, and we were all given specific jobs to do. My war skill specialty was medical administration.
There was a lot of shenanigans that went on that, was men thinking that they could take advantage of women in those settings.
They tried, but we had a code and a system where we protected one another because a lot of times we were outnumbered 100 to 1, kind of thing. So we were sent out in teams, not individually during Vietnam. The thing was, they expressed to us, do not allow yourself to be alone. The rapes and assaults that happened were setups. They were set up by groups of men, not by one or two, but groups of men that orchestrated these things. We had to watch behind our backs. We had to, pay attention to what was going on so we would not subject ourselves to being set up. A lot of women didn't survive that. I was actually there a year and 2 months. Only because of the hospital duties. And a lot of the women were disappearing. We were shrinking in numbers. I later found out that a lot of them had gotten raped, and gotten pregnant. They're all about the same size, right?
Well, this one's a little bit bigger, but yeah, they're all pretty much the same size. And then on this end over here, they've got, we got a lot of them. They're going to landscape this. There's some people who volunteered to landscape this for us at their expense, as their gift to us.
During that era, women, you were either put on an abortion list or you were discharged. And a lot of women disappeared because they didn't want to be placed on an abortion list. Every woman has her story on how things happened to her, but later on, when I would ask, where's so-and-so, I want to say goodbye to so-and-so, and blah, 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 and and they said, well, she left the military. It really is disturbing to know that this was done to us women, and I had a fight on my hands, and I did fight back. I guess the last 6 months of my combat tour was when the war was coming to an end. I had the heart for it, but not the stomach. I kind of left the medical field after Vietnam. At the end of Vietnam, they disassembled the women's military forces. We were no longer a separate force. DOD decided just to consolidate us and put us all under one commander. Some of us had maintained warrant officer ranks, but a lot of the women lost their commission and were converted to the enlisted ranks because they consolidated us with the men.
So as far as the issue of fairness to women, the system we had was always an unfair one. I said so repeatedly.
The Women's Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPs, was organized in August 1943. When the WASPs disbanded at the end of 1944, they had flown 77 types of aircraft, more than 60 million duty miles, and proved that American women were willing to risk their lives in wartime flying assignments. Ironically, it wasn't until 1977 that the Air Force graduated its first group of female pilots, which brought mixed reaction from WASP members.
So it irritated me just a wee bit that the news media didn't get around to admitting that the WASP were indeed first.
Because of the 1956 combat exclusion law, women were still prohibited from being assigned to aircraft that were in combat missions or involved in combat operations behind enemy lines. Modern warfare, with its use of high-tech weapons and surveillance systems, has made distinctions between frontline and other positions almost irrelevant in terms of physical danger.
So it was a little different, a little chaotic, because now we have no more female commanders, we had no more female first sergeants, we had no other females looking after other females. It was like we were thrown to the wolves. She came out and told us. Nobody knows what we went through. All of us women, I don't know how the other women were prepared for what they went through. I know how I was prepared. The current women today need to know that we were all female force. It wasn't until after Vietnam where we were given more jobs and more responsibilities, and nurses who had MDs were allowed to be doctors. We were allowed to do more than just type and take blood pressure. We have to break through these barriers.
But the period of talking about those other issues is over. We have a decision made by our National Command Authority, and we will proceed, and we're going to do it better than anybody.
This is your husband's?
Well, no, actually somebody donated it here.
Oh.
And I took it up for him to look at,
Uh-huh.
but he's not going to. He's just not capable of doing that. So
bless his
he
heart.
forgets it's there.
Yeah.
So I brought it back down here for you,
Bless your
for you
heart.
all to enjoy.
I appreciate it.
No problem, no problem.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay. You want to look through it? Wow. Yeah. Whew. Wow. Oh, from the very beginning, 1775. That's the beginning. April 19, 1775. Wow. Wow. The thing around the women's military forces was we called them BAMs. Female women in the Marine Corps were called BAMs. And BAM is acronym for Badass Marines. Hooah! They were tough. There was few of them, but they were tougher than we were. They were tougher than the men. Looking to see if there's anything about Korat Air Base in Thailand. That was my first assignment when to Southeast Asia. It was a joke to the men. It's, well, you know, if the women want to hang with us, then we'll give them the worst guys to train. You know, I'm like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can deal with these guys. They're not going to push me out. You think this is a joke? I don't think it's a joke. These men either have a mother, a wife, daughters, sisters. These guys belong to somebody. This is not a joke to me. To make a long story short, when these guys found out I was leaving the military, they actually said, you got to take us with you. He says, no one else is going to put up with our crap the way you did. And I said, I thought you guys hated me. No. We knew that you cared. We wouldn't still be here in the military if it wasn't for you. We were on our way out. I actually transferred from the Air Force to the Army. At first, I was going to leave the Air Force. I went and sought some assistance on a sexual harassment situation in the Air Force, and I was going to leave, like most of the women. But I said, you know, I'm going to stand and fight, because if this is happening to me and other women and we don't fight it and do something about it, it'll never stop. I transferred branches in order to fight the case against the Air Force. It took 5 years, but I did win the case. I left the military with 25 years of service. 5 years Army, 20 years Air Force. I stood firm. I fought my case and set precedents for other women to be able to fight their own case. Yeah. Today's cell phone, solid steel. They don't make them like this anymore.
Oh yeah. It's not bad.
They approached me about the memorial in the 80s. The few of us who did go to combat as nurses who were out in the field, we started doing fundraisers and asking for help doing a memorial because we didn't want to be forgotten. It wasn't a popular war. It wasn't a war that made us popular at all. And a lot of people don't think it was just because the fact that they don't understand. In that time, no one thought it was a just cause, but having been there and having been in the midst and have gone back to see what I can do to help, yes, our cause was just. And that I'm standing here to be able to witness to the fact that it was a just cause. I was notified that they wanted to use my face image as one of the faces in the memorial. They decided to do that because of the fight I put up with trying to do something about the problems with sexual assault, sexual harassment against women in the military. It took us about a good 10 years. So from about 83, 84 to 93, it came out of our own pockets. We paid for the memorial ourselves. Once women get together and unite and stand firm, I think that they can elevate us, and that's what we need. We need to be elevated. I had to stand firm to what I believe and who I am, and being able to set an example for a woman who has not been taught to have self-esteem or self-confidence and knowing where she can go and where she can be. We got to know who we are as an American first. You got to be strong. You have to be confident. It comes from here. I think women can do anything they put their mind to. When we planted that seed in doing the Women's Vietnam Memorial, we took the leadership role, hoping that others would follow. And I'm just one person. However, it only takes one spark to start a wildfire. They actually use images of a lot of us. If you ever go to Washington, D.C. to see the Women's Vietnam Memorial, I'm the one that's looking up to heaven. We female veterans have a gift. Don't hide that gift. Don't shy away. I have no contacts with any of the women that I knew from Vietnam. I don't know where they are now. I don't know if how many more of us are still alive. But we need to unite to make us strong. When we talk about the Time's Up movement or Me Too movement, the female veteran still is not heard. If you told them you're a Vietnam vet, and they say, yeah, right. We've been invisible too long. Participating with the women veterans has helped me look at how I can extend my talents in other ways, and they can help me as well with a lot of my projects. It's very, very important that we stay connected, reach out and reach up and teach one and reach one. with what we're doing and be able to collaborate with our talents and our time for the community.